Hey guys, this is ChiefKacey here. So tonight I have an extra special guest with me here at Midwest Fur Fest 2021. It is none other than the one and only Chise. Hi Chise.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Wonderful, thank you.
So I just finished up sitting. I was in the audience watching your presentation on microbiology. And how do you feel like that went?
Oh, I think it went really well. I was really happy with the turnout, and I think it was super informative. A lot of people had questions afterwards and got answered, so I walked away feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, and it's like some of the things like even I learned back in science class, like back in high school and stuff, where it's kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, I remember that too. Like it's just kind of like stuff coming back to me a little bit. Some of those things that I learned back then.
Exactly.
And so, my first kind of question is, how did you get into the furry fandom?
So this is always one of my favorite questions. So I got into the furry fandom in 2015. Before that, I've always had a love for anthropomorphic animals, but I had no idea that the fandom even existed. So a former coworker of mine, I came across them drawing one day, and I was like, oh, what's that? Expressed that I like Disney and all kinds of, cartoons and stuff that I grew up with as a kid. That was when they told me, that they were furry, and I'm like, okay, well, what's that? And they opened me up to showing me like Fur Affinity at the time, and I was like, wait a minute, there's this whole entire community that loves the same things that I do. And I saw the fursuits, and I was like, wait a minute, what have I been missing this whole time?
Mm-hmm.
The fact that people can make a character that they like, and they can, envision this character, be this character, encompass this character, and make this persona their own.
Mm-hmm.
So 2015, I was kind of a late bloomer compared to some people, who've been in this fandom for years, but needless to say, when I found out about it, I fell into it head first.
Yeah.
So it's been amazing.
Yeah, it's always interesting hearing how the different ways that people kind of run into becoming a furry and hearing about it. And so, where you work currently, does anybody know that you're a furry?
Actually, they do not. I'm sure some people have some hints sometimes because I'll walk in with maybe like a Robin Hood backpack, or I have like my Chise pins on my lanyard with my ID for work, and my door key, but. So some people might catch on, but it's kind of like a little bit like indistinct sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm a little bit more secretive about it there.
Yeah, I know you've talked a little bit before about wanting to protect your identity too.
Absolutely. Some people, not trying to say that everybody does it, but not everybody is completely understanding of hobbies or being in the fandom, and sometimes, like even with strangers on Twitter, sometimes when I'm doing SciComm, you have some people that automatically just kind of feel like maybe your opinion or your research or your post don't have any weight to them because you're a furry, so it's just like automatically defaulted.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't want that to happen with my job. Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of like almost like that meme of like there's like an intense political discussion going on online, and one of the people has like an anime avatar or something like that, and people like to use that as like a an ad hominem attack. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's been a very, very common thing here. Like I think. Oh goodness, this happened just yesterday. I was retweeted by a very prominent figure with millions of followers on, I believe they're on MSNBC, and the first thing that I started seeing, of course, was people popping into my mentions saying, furry, they're furry, this is where you're getting your information from, this is your source, and it's just, judge me on the sources that I provide and the information that I give. If you have a problem with the data that I provide, that's fine. Like, debate me on that and we can discuss that. But if you're ultimately going to just dismiss my research because I'm a furry, then, I think that says more about you than it does me.
Yeah, that's not fair.
Not at all.
And so, how did you first get interested in microbiology?
So I was in pre-veterinary medicine for my undergrad originally.
Okay.
I've always loved animals. I really thought that I wanted to be a veterinarian. Grew up wanting to take care of horses and livestock animals. after a while wondering if it was something that I could fully be into, just because in the veterinary field, you know, it takes a certain person to be able to continue through with vet school and everything. And I wondered if I was the type of person that wanted my own practice and if I could do that for the rest of my years. I actually spoke to my anatomy professor at the time, and she told me to maybe consider animal lab management. And so when I got into that course, I started seeing that there were so many things out there that I could do, and it was surrounded with, you know, research and therapeutics and helping people, you know, developing vaccines, developing cures, you know, all of that. And so afterwards, I decided to step out of pre-veterinary medicine, thinking, you know, maybe I didn't want to work with animals. And I started going into molecular and cellular biology instead. And so when I got to my graduate degree, I'm like, yeah, I really want to stay in biotech, and this is what I want to do. I want to be able to help people.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so it kind of carried on from there. And I mean, you know, veterinary medicine, while it's in the sciences, it can sit there and branch off to broader aspects.
Yeah.
So that's where I found myself.
That's kind of interesting. So a little kind of side question to that. I know obviously your focus is on, you know, human molecular biology, but does any of that kind of relate back to the animal stuff at all?
Sometimes. My work, which is fortunate in the sense that I don't have to worry about working with animals right now. So all of my stuff has to deal with cells and being in a petri dish and being in the lab. So I've stepped off of, just because like animal studies that you're working with are usually like preliminary data studies. You know, that's data beforehand that you gather. So you'll do animal studies and then you'll do human studies. So my work no longer has to worry about doing animal research, but I'm on the cellular level.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very, very interesting. So what education did you get to get into microbiology exactly?
So right now I have 4 degrees under my belt.
4? How long did that take you?
That has taken several years. Several. So I did end up finishing with pre-veterinary medicine because that was my degree that I had started with. So I have a certificate technically in pre-veterinary medicine. Then I branched off and I got my my bachelor's degree in biology, and then I also pursued my master's in biotech. But then the other thing is that after my pre-veterinary medicine degree, I sat there and I also did an associate's. So my associates in life sciences, just because I didn't want to go into undergrad, maybe more so having knowledge of pre-veterinary medicine, I decided to go get an associate's in life sciences for 2 years to give me, like, you know, just to kind of get my feet wet. Exactly. Yeah. Just so I didn't feel like I was going into undergrad, you know, being not on a level playing field with everybody else.
Yeah. So that education has helped a lot.
Oh my
with
gosh.
your career.
Absolutely. Absolutely. After I finished my master's degree, I felt like a totally different person. And so some people ask me, "Hey, you know, are you going to pursue your PhD?" And the answer is yes. Like I'm already on my way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I figured it was probably something that I should do just to kind of, you know, not only just to kind of help quell some of the people that are like, you know, you don't have a PhD, you're not a doctor. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm gonna take care of that.
Well, actually.
Yeah. Well, actually.
So would you put on your Twitter handle Dr. Chise?
Absolutely, I would.
Yeah. And would you pursue the academic part of that, or would you want to stay more as a, you know, hands dirty scientist?
Hands dirty scientist, all the way. My place is at the lab bench. You know, I totally have respect for academics and being a professor, but my job is in the lab.
Okay. Very, very respectable. Yeah, both either path.
Absolutely.
And so, what does a typical workday look like? Sorry, let me rephrase that. What does a typical workday look for you right now, especially with everything going on?
Oh goodness, with everything going on, you know, even with the pandemic hitting and us trying to get these vaccines rolled out, you know, sitting there and working on variant-specific vaccines, working on multivalent vaccines. Then I'm also sitting there and I'm working on our HIV and influenza projects, you know, trying to sit there and deal with that. A lot of it has been divided by the fact that we cannot all be in the lab at the same time on the same days. So work is taking a little bit longer than usual just because you're still trying to be, you know, smart and protected in a, you know, COVID world.
Yeah.
So most days I wake up super early, usually about 4 o'clock. I take care of everything that I need to at home to get myself ready for the day, you know, workout, shower, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And while I'm working out, I'll sit there and I'll work on Twitter replies because I try to get to as many as I can. And right now, being at the convention, I feel like I've even fallen a little bit behind and off the wagon. I was like, I'm going to have to catch up eventually, but I will. So then I'll go into the lab. I'll usually work a 7 o'clock to about a 3 o'clock day, sometimes taking lunch, sometimes not. And people usually ask me, well, how do you get to all these replies while you're at work when you're, you know, doing this and this and that in the lab? And the thing is that, you know, my experiments take time. You know, sometimes I'm running like centrifuges that will take, you know, maybe 30 minutes at a time, or I'm running an assay that's going to take some time. Sometimes you also have to, I mean, growing and culturing virus takes time. I can't just sit there and, you know, take SARS-CoV-2 and sit there and have it in a petri dish in a matter of, you know, like 2 hours. It doesn't happen like that. So I have to sit there and let stuff incubate, you know, grow this virus up, and then test, you know, blood serum samples against it to find out, you know, how protective a person who received this vaccine, you know, on this time period, how effective it is against this variant. So stuff like that takes time. But while my assays are running, I will try to get to Twitter replies as much as I can, and even while I'm going, you know, to different buildings on campus, I'll sit there and I'll take my time to do it as well. So my days are usually pretty busy. Even when I get home after work, as much as I can, I will try to get to replies to people as well. And you know, that's not part of my day job or anything of that sort, of course. That's just stuff that I do outside for free, just to help people. But it is like a second job sometimes.
I think that's part of why a lot of people have a lot of admiration for you, is because that dedication, you know, pretty much since the beginning you've been at it. You've been
absolutely for quite some time now, just about every single day. Some days I will take breaks, you know, like I usually don't always post on holidays, or I won't always post on the weekend. But you know, with stuff going on right now, I think I haven't been the best at spacing it out, you know, where I'm like, okay, don't post on a Tuesday, don't post on a Saturday, but I end up doing it anyway.
Yeah. Are you still there at bed even?
Oh yeah. Pretty much. It just.
But you gotta take care of yourself.
I know. I really need to be better about it. I swear I do get rest. I swear.
Good. And so, what do you? So this is kind of more of a fun question. Do you have a favorite microbe to study?
Oh goodness, I would have to think like. Zika was really interesting when that was going around, analyzing that. But if I had to choose out, I mean, not that analyzing SARS-CoV-2 hasn't been really interesting too, because it is quite a very interesting virus. I would have to say influenza has been one of my favorites to work with, only because influenza is such a tough nut to crack. I want to be that person that really helps get to that and chisel that point down. Oh, also RSV, because RSV has been, you know, it doesn't maybe affect as many adults outside of those who are older and immunocompromised, but affects a lot of children, and is something that we really needed to, like, you know, kind of like break down on. But that's definitely something that I've been really interested in too.
And what's RSV, just for?
That is respiratory syncytial virus.
Okay.
So that's like, it kind of causes, like, I'm trying to think of how to put it. It's a lot of cold symptoms in children, you know, like, well, it would produce cold symptoms for adults, you know what I mean? But it's more drastic in children.
Okay.
You know, so definitely something to work on.
Yeah, definitely. And so I have kind of a question, because like a lot of times, you know, when there's anything natural in the world that people don't like mosquitoes or something, they'll always ask, like, why do these things even exist? So why do you think viruses exist?
That's also something that I touched on in my presentation earlier. So not every virus or bacteria or microbe out there is necessarily harmful. You have helpful viruses, you have helpful bacteria. Not all of them are bad. And it's just something, you know, like, you might not like it, but it's something that exists, and something that, you know, might help in some ways, but is also harmful in other ways. Just kind of how that works. You know, I know that people don't technically like mosquitoes, but if we got rid of all mosquitoes, what happens to the food chain on the animals that eat mosquitoes?
Right.
You know, you have to think about it like that. I don't like mosquito bites as much as the next person. Comes to West Nile, comes down to malaria. Those viruses pretty harmful. But the thing is that if every mosquito on the planet was wiped out, we might not have some animals around that do rely on them.
Right.
So.
Yeah, so it's kind of like it's like
It's
the
a
world
trade-off.
balancing act.
Absolutely, it's a trade-off.
And so kind of touching back a little bit on like the science discussion on social media, what do you think is the best practice for kind of communicating that important information out there?
Oh, definitely. If I had to advise people if they're going to do SciComm, listening to people and breaking it down. A lot of the people out there, like, they're not anti-vaxxers, or they're not like totally against vaccination. The majority of people are just hesitant, and they're confused, and they're scared, and they don't fully understand it.
Right.
So, if one thing, it's that they want to have their concerns heard, and they want to understand. So I try to break down every study that I have, because your average layperson does not understand scientific journals. The wording is difficult. You know, you've got scientific jargon that people might not understand. It's difficult. I mean, when I was going through school, I had to break down those studies and, you know, try and define every word that I didn't quite grasp and break them down. But now I'm able to sit there and apply that to helping people now and breaking those studies down into layman's terms.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
So where do you think, so like with influenza vaccine, how it's always like you talked about in the presentation, it's always like a 40 to 60% on whether it works or not. Do you think there's ever a future where it could get closer to like that 80% to 90%, like more like the coronavirus vaccine has helped?
Absolutely. I think one day we are going to get to that point. And the reason why I say that is because inactivated vaccines can't be updated quite like our mRNA vaccines, where you might have an inactivated vaccine be updated probably like yearly for your yearly strain of influenza for that year. But with mRNA, we have the ability to sit there and tweak these fairly easily within even the span of like a month sometimes. But like I was telling everybody in the presentation, it's the testing that takes a while.
Right.
But tweaking it doesn't take very long at all. So when it comes to influenza, if we sit there and we have this strain and we see maybe what its mutations are or what it's looking to do like this coming season, we might be able to sit there and take our vaccine and tweak it and make sure that we can combat that strain before it gets the chance to like mutate wildly, because influenza mutates at a much faster rate than COVID does, or I should say SARS-CoV-2.
Right, it seems like, yeah, because you have those, like every season it's like a different strain.
Yep,
So,
whereas SARS-CoV-2 like mutates like, you know, a couple amino acids here and there, and like influenza will go much farther than that.
Yeah. And so kind of like somewhat related with the, I know you've talked about working on the HIV vaccine. Where do you think the future is on that?
Oh gosh, now that one's going to be a little bit harder, of course, because HIV is a little bit more difficult than when you're dealing with SARS or with influenza. So with HIV, the other like really difficult thing is, you know, you got to worry about, you got to pretty much deal with a lot of ethics when it comes to, you know, testing and stuff like that, and you're hoping that because you're, you know, using this vaccine with like a healthier population, that it's going to show what you want it to do when it comes to actually testing in HIV positive individuals, and you're hoping that it is going to be indeed something that is going to help them deal with it. So that one's a little bit more difficult in that sense, but I really do have faith that we're going to get through it and make some breakthroughs with that. We have a promising candidate, you know, in the works where,
that's awesome.
Yeah, where we saw that I think more than 90% of the individuals in the preliminary data produced antibodies, you know, protective against HIV. So we're hoping that we can get these results replicated on a larger scale.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's the important step, you know, being able to take it from that small sample to a larger sample.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know a lot of people everywhere, you know, that has affected, because I remember HIV was such a big thing in like learning in school, and I remember the videos they used to show us. They this video I watched, I remember they were like, look to your left, look to your right, chances are one of them will become HIV
I
positive.
remember that. I totally remember that.
And then like at the end of the video, it was like all these people we just interviewed, they're all passed away from HIV, and it's like, you know, it's sad, and like everything that went on in the 80s and the 90s, and how many people were lost to that, especially because the stigma of like, you know, LGBT community
Yes.
and HIV, and so that's why like it is good. It's awesome to hear and that, you know, there's progress being done on the HIV vaccine. Obviously, we want to see results, but it's always good to hear that the work is being done.
I absolutely agree.
Okay, and I wanted to also ask you, are there any messages you wanted to put out there into the public about especially the importance of the vaccine?
Absolutely. Absolutely. If there is one thing that I can express, you know, the importance of getting vaccinated right now. You know, these vaccines are saving lives, and they're going to help us, you know, I'm not going to say put an end to COVID, but kind of defang, you know, SARS-CoV-2 or just COVID in general. And if there's one thing that I was, you know, trying to express at the panel that I had today, it's that vaccination not only protects you, but it protects those around you as well. And that's why it's really important, if you're eligible for your booster, to get it. You know, it reduces infection. It not only literally, it doesn't just restore protection that might be lost over time, as, you know, vaccines do wane in time, and they are supposed to. Our antibodies are supposed to wane. It not only restores what is lost, but it exceeds it. So it literally boosts that protection back up, you know, not only just against the original, you know, virus itself, but against variants too. So if there's anything that I could tell anybody, the faster that we get more people vaccinated, the faster that we can really put the brunt of this pandemic behind us. So definitely, you know, and the other thing that I want to express is the importance of helping, you know, circulate the right information. There's a lot of misinformation circulating right now. You know, there's some websites, some media, you know, even just some individuals, you know, that are circulating misinformation for whatever personal gain that might, you know, come from. But the important thing is if we get the right information out there, we get the positive studies out there, you know, tell people exactly, you know, how these help and what they do. It just creates this long train of communication that can help us, you know, really put this behind us.
Yeah, because like, especially I guess from my own personal experience, like I've heard somebody say that like, oh, I have a strong immune system, so why should I have to worry about it? But, you know, getting the vaccine will, you know, help reduce, you can fact check me on this, but like getting the vaccine helps reduce transmission?
Yes, so it doesn't like stop, so this is where some people get confused. They think that the vaccines are supposed to completely stop transmission. They don't stop all transmission, but they help reduce it.
Yeah.
So the more people that get this, the more that we can help reduce this from spreading. And if it does start to be something where it's a mild, you know, virus that's circulating, like the, you know, endemic human coronaviruses that we have circulating now and have for years, if we could get SARS-CoV-2 on that level, I think the world would feel a little bit more at ease.
Yeah, definitely. All right, well, thank you.
Absolutely.
And just as kind of a quick closing little question, what advice would you give to somebody who wanted to go into a similar kind of field?
Oh, definitely look in your community for some good, you know, programs. I highly recommend people look for a good like microbiology program, or even general biology if you're just starting out of high school. One thing I will tell people, take it slow. You don't have to sit there and like jump into everything. If you still, you know, want to, I mean, science is such a vast field. So if you want to make it easier, I wish that before I had gone and, you know, jumped into pre-veterinary medicine, and maybe I'd given it a little bit more research. Going and pursuing your associates is like a 2-year degree before you jump into university is a great idea to find out exactly where you want to be and what you want to do. So that's definitely something that I would recommend. So stick to those science fields. Biology is always super great to start out with because you're going to learn all of the broad aspects, find out the specifics of where you want to be. And then definitely in this field, you're definitely going to want to pursue a master's or a PhD. Master's helps in the sense that, you know, the way that I did it was that, you know, I went into the field, worked my way up, you know, in this job position, and then pursued my master's at the same time. So that always works well, because the important thing is that just as important as school experiences too. You want to get that hands-on, you want to be at the lab bench. So definitely look to that. But yeah, in this field you're going to want master's, PhD.
Definitely. I imagine. But yes, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
For taking the time out of your day to talk with me.
Oh my gosh. Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
And so this is Chise and ChiefKacey out. I'll see you next time. Bye.